This video is brought to you by Roll for Combat, an official Paizo actual play podcast. Subscribe today to Agents of Edgewatch and join Basil, Dougie, Gomez, and Lomang as they protect and serve the citizens of Absalom from a mysterious and diabolical plot. Hey everybody, Dave here with another Pathfinder rule reminder for you, and today's question deals with emanation spells. So those spells that have an area of effect that surrounds the caster. And specifically we are going to be looking at the harm spell. When you use the 3-action version of harm, it creates a 30-foot emanation, and that creates a zone surrounding the caster, and it says all targets in that area are affected by the harm spell. So that raised the question of, does that mean that the caster is harmed by that spell too? And the good news is no, probably not. And the reason for that, even though the caster is standing smack in the middle of a zone that the spell says affects all living targets in it, if you look up the rules for area effects and specifically emanations in the core rules, it specifies that unless the spell says otherwise, then the caster chooses whether or not they wish to be subject to the effects of their own emanation spells. So that caster who casts the 3-action version of harm is probably going to say, no, I don't want to be affected by this, I don't want to hurt myself, and therefore they would not be harmed. But there are other spells that do specifically call out situations for emanation effects. For example, anti-magic specifically says that the caster is always affected by an anti-magic spell that they cast. So you don't get a choice in that case, you would be subject to those effects. And spells like Bane specifically say that enemies within the area are affected by the Bane spell. So you wouldn't have to worry about any of your allies being targeted or you being targeted by the effects of the Bane spell when you cast it, because it says only enemies. So a pretty short one today. That is the basics of how emanation spells work, and again, the good news is, unless the spell says otherwise, you get to choose whether or not you wish to be subject to the effects of that spell. As always, I will leave links to relevant conversations in the description for this video, and I will also leave a link to Roll for Combat, my new sponsor. If you're not familiar with Roll for Combat, they are an actual play podcast group that covers both Starfinder and Pathfinder, and they are also an official Paizo actual play podcast. So if you're not familiar with them, make sure you go check them out. Also, please leave a comment of any topics that you would like to suggest for future rule reminders. I always appreciate seeing those, and that's where I get all of my ideas for these rule reminder conversations. And as always, I want to thank everybody out there who supports me as well. If it's just clicking the like button, subscribing to this channel, leaving a comment of support, sharing the video with your friends, subscribing to the Patreon, it all adds up, and I do greatly appreciate all the support you folks give me. And with that, I'd like to say thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.